Hong Kong is a city where mountains, wealth, history, and constant movement are compressed into one narrow stretch of land, leaving growth with only one direction, up. At first glance, its glittering skyline of glass towers and neon lights captures your attention. But beneath that vibrant surface lies a story of resilience shaped by limited space and a rich, layered past. Every crowded street, ferry crossing, and hillside escalator reflects the creative ways people have adapted to life in one of the world's most densely populated places. More than just a destination, Hong Kong is a living example of how humanity evolves when there is almost no room left to spread outward. Shock 1. The efficiency of the city. The first thing that genuinely surprised me about Hong Kong was how incredibly efficient everything felt. I knew before arriving that the city had a reputation for being well organized, but nothing really prepared me for experiencing it firsthand. From the moment I landed at the airport, it was obvious that every part of the transport system had been carefully designed to keep people moving quickly, smoothly, and with as little stress as possible. It almost felt like the city was operating on its own rhythm, and everyone simply moved with it. Getting into the city was remarkably straightforward. I boarded the airport express, connected seamlessly to the MTR, and before long I was standing in the lobby of my hotel. There was no confusion, no endless searching for directions, and no feeling of being overwhelmed in an unfamiliar place. The signs were clear, the stations were easy to navigate, and the trains arrived exactly when the schedule said they would. Everything worked with a level of precision that made traveling feel effortless. Coming from Lagos, where traffic can completely reshape your plans and turn a short journey into hours on the road, the contrast was impossible to ignore. Time suddenly felt predictable again. Instead of worrying about delays, I could simply focus on enjoying the experience of exploring a new city. One of my favorite discoveries was the octopus card. At first, it seemed like just another transit card, but I quickly realized it was much more than that. With a simple tap, I could pay for the metro, buses, ferries, and even purchases at convenience stores and small shops. There was no need to carry cash or think about different payment methods. It felt as though Hong Kong handed me a single key that unlocked the entire city. That small card perfectly captured what impressed me most about Hong Kong: its ability to make everyday life simple, seamless, and remarkably efficient. Shock 2. The skyline and vertical living. The second thing that struck me almost immediately was just how vertical Hong Kong really is. I had seen countless photos of its famous skyline before my trip, so I thought I knew what to expect. But no picture, no matter how impressive, prepares you for what it feels like to stand at the foot of those towering buildings. They don't simply rise above the streets, they dominate them, stretching so high into the sky that you instinctively find yourself looking up. With skyscrapers packed tightly together, you become instantly aware of how every square meter of space has been carefully used. As I wandered through the city, I realized that Hong Kong isn't just built across the land. It's built in layers. Street level is only the beginning. Above the shops are restaurants. Above the restaurants are offices. Above the offices are apartments, and somewhere even higher are hotels, gyms, and hidden cafes with incredible views. Entire neighborhoods seem to exist several floors above the ground, connected by elevated walkways, escalators, and bridges. Exploring the city felt less like walking through streets and more like discovering different levels of a living, breathing maze. Then night arrived, and the city transformed completely. Standing along Victoria Harbor, I watched the skyline come alive as thousands of lights reflected across the water. Ferries glided quietly between the islands, while the illuminated towers shimmered in every direction, changing colors and creating a scene that felt almost unreal. It wasn't loud or overwhelming, it was simply mesmerizing. The entire waterfront seemed to come together in a performance that unfolded naturally without trying too hard to impress. I've visited large cities before, but Hong Kong has a character that's entirely its own. Its skyline isn't just beautiful because of its height or modern architecture. It's unforgettable because it reflects the city's remarkable ability to thrive within limited space, turning necessity into one of the most breathtaking urban landscapes in the world. Shock 3. How safe and orderly it feels. Another thing that genuinely stood out to me was how safe and orderly Hong Kong felt. Before my trip, I'd read all kinds of opinions online, so I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. But after spending time walking through the city, especially late in the evening, those doubts quickly disappeared. Whether I was riding the MTR, wandering through quiet side streets, or exploring busy neighborhoods after dark, I never found myself looking over my shoulder or feeling uneasy. There was a calm confidence in the atmosphere that was impossible to ignore. What struck me most was the way people simply went about their day. Everyone seemed focused on where they were going, without unnecessary attention to the people around them. There was no sense of being watched or sized up, something that many travelers instinctively prepare themselves for in unfamiliar places. Coming from Lagos, where staying alert often becomes second nature, experiencing that level of peace was refreshing. It allowed me to stop thinking about my surroundings for a moment and simply enjoy being present in the city. Even during the busiest hours, Hong Kong never felt chaotic. The streets were crowded, the stations were full, and the trains carried thousands of people, yet everything moved with remarkable order. People patiently lined up before boarding, stepped aside to let passengers exit first, and respected the personal space of others whenever possible. There was an unspoken understanding that everyone had somewhere to be, and the easiest way to get there was by cooperating rather than competing. That sense of order changed the entire experience of exploring the city. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the crowds, I found myself appreciating how smoothly everything functioned. It reminded me that a city's quality isn't measured only by its skyscrapers or modern infrastructure, but also by the everyday habits of its people. In Hong Kong, that shared respect for public space creates an environment that feels welcoming, efficient, and surprisingly peaceful, even in one of the busiest cities on Earth. Shock 4. The mix of old and new. One of the most memorable things about Hong Kong was the way it effortlessly blends the old with the new. Before visiting, I expected a city defined by its gleaming skyscrapers and modern skyline. Those iconic towers are certainly there, rising high above the streets, surrounded by luxury boutiques, designer stores, and some of the most impressive shopping malls I've ever seen. But what truly surprised me was how quickly that polished image gives way to something much older, quieter, and deeply rooted in history. It doesn't take long to step away from the glass buildings and find yourself in a completely different world. Around the next corner, there might be a centuries-old temple filled with the scent of incense, a narrow street lined with weathered shop fronts, or a neighborhood where colorful laundry hangs from apartment balconies above bustling local markets. These places don't feel like carefully preserved tourist attractions. They feel lived in, authentic, and full of stories that have been unfolding for generations. That contrast became one of my favorite parts of exploring the city. I could spend the morning admiring bold, futuristic architecture that seemed to belong in tomorrow's world, then spend the afternoon wandering through winding alleys where hand-painted signs, family-owned businesses, and traditional food stalls reminded me that Hong Kong's identity wasn't built overnight. Every neighborhood offered a different perspective, and each transition felt natural rather than forced. What impressed me most was that neither side of the city seemed to overshadow the other. The modern skyline never erased the past, and the historic districts never felt frozen in time. Instead, they existed together, each adding depth and character to the other. That's what gives Hong Kong its unmistakable personality. It's far more than a city of impressive buildings or historic landmarks. It's a place where tradition and progress coexist every single day, proving that a city doesn't have to choose between preserving its heritage and embracing the future. In Hong Kong, both are woven seamlessly into everyday life. Shock 5. The food scene. I knew before arriving that Hong Kong had a great food scene, but I honestly had no idea just how deeply food is woven into everyday life there. It isn't simply about eating, it's part of the city's identity. From the moment I started exploring, I realized that almost every street had something tempting to offer. One meal might be a humble bowl of noodles served with a cup of traditional Hong Kong milk tea in a tiny neighborhood cafe, while the next could be dinner overlooking Victoria Harbor at an elegant restaurant. What amazed me was that both experiences felt equally memorable, just for completely different reasons. The variety was probably the biggest surprise. For a city with such limited space, Hong Kong somehow manages to fit an incredible range of flavors into every neighborhood. You can start your morning with fresh dim sum, walk past shop windows filled with perfectly roasted duck and crispy pork, stop by a local bakery for warm pineapple buns or egg tarts, and then, just a few streets later, find authentic Japanese, Korean, Indian, Italian, or Middle Eastern restaurants. Every corner seemed to introduce something new, making each walk through the city feel like a food tour without even trying. What I appreciated most, though, was discovering that the best meals weren't always found in expensive restaurants. More often than not, the places that left the biggest impression were the small, busy eateries where tables turned over quickly, menus were simple, and locals filled nearly every seat. Those restaurants didn't rely on fancy decor or elaborate presentations. They focused on doing a few dishes exceptionally well, and that authenticity came through with every bite. If there's one piece of advice I'd give anyone visiting Hong Kong, it's this. Arrive with an open mind and an even bigger appetite. Don't judge a restaurant by its size or appearance. Some of the city's greatest culinary experiences are hidden in the places you'd be most likely to walk right past. And those are often the meals you'll remember long after you've returned home. Shock 6. The crowds and the pace. Now let's talk about something that caught me completely off guard. The crowds and the incredible pace of life in Hong Kong. From the moment I stepped into the city, I could feel its energy. People walked with purpose, trains arrived and departed within minutes, sidewalks stayed busy from morning until late at night, and it seemed as though everyone knew exactly where they were going. There was very little hesitation. The city moved with a rhythm that didn't slow down for anyone. During my first couple of days, I found myself struggling to keep up. There were moments when I had to step out of the flow, stand quietly on the side of the street, and simply take everything in. Everywhere I looked, there was movement. Crowded intersections, flashing signs, conversations in different languages, the sound of trams passing by, and thousands of people weaving effortlessly through the streets. It wasn't chaotic in the way some cities can be. Instead, it was highly organized, but the sheer intensity of it all could still feel overwhelming if you weren't used to that kind of environment. Coming from Lagos, I'm no stranger to busy streets or large crowds, but Hong Kong's pace felt different. It wasn't driven by traffic or unpredictability. It was driven by efficiency. Everyone seemed to move with intention, and that collective momentum gave the city a unique sense of urgency that I had rarely experienced before. The interesting part was that, after a while, I stopped resisting it. Gradually, I found my own rhythm and began moving with the city instead of against it. What initially felt exhausting slowly became exciting. I started appreciating the constant buzz, the feeling that something was always happening around the next corner, and the sense that the city was always alive. That said, I won't pretend the adjustment was instant. For the first day or two, it genuinely felt as though Hong Kong was moving several steps ahead of me. But once I settled into its rhythm, that relentless energy became one of the things I admired most about the city. Shock 7. The escape. Nature, beaches, and calm. One of the biggest surprises for me, and probably the one I appreciated the most, was discovering how easy it is to escape the intensity of Hong Kong. Before visiting, I imagined a city made entirely of skyscrapers, busy intersections, and endless stretches of concrete. That's the image most people see online, and honestly, it's what I expected too. What I didn't expect was how quickly the city could transform into something completely different. One moment, I was surrounded by towering buildings, crowded streets, and the constant rhythm of urban life. A short train ride or bus journey later, I found myself standing beside a quiet beach, walking along a peaceful hiking trail, or looking down at the skyline from a hillside covered in greenery. The contrast was almost unbelievable. It felt as though two completely different worlds existed within the same city, separated by only a few minutes of travel. Those quiet moments became some of the highlights of my trip. After spending hours exploring busy neighborhoods and navigating the fast pace of the city, stepping into nature gave me the chance to slow down. I could finally take a deep breath, reflect on everything I had experienced, and simply enjoy the silence. Watching the skyline from a mountain trail or listening to the waves along the coastline reminded me that Hong Kong isn't defined only by its buildings. It's equally shaped by the natural landscapes that surround them. I think this is one side of Hong Kong that doesn't get nearly enough attention. Most short videos and travel photos focus on the skyline, the shopping districts, and the dazzling city lights. While those places are undeniably impressive, they tell only part of the story. If you're ever lucky enough to visit, don't limit yourself to the downtown streets. Make time for the beaches, the hiking trails, and the quieter corners of the city. That balance between relentless urban energy and peaceful natural beauty is what makes Hong Kong feel so unique. It's a contrast that stays with you long after the trip is over. Shock 8. The cost and value. Let's be honest, Hong Kong isn't a destination that most people would describe as cheap. One of the first things I noticed while planning my trip was how quickly the costs could add up, especially when it came to accommodation. Hotel prices can take a serious bite out of your budget, particularly if you want to stay in the more central areas. Some attractions, rooftop bars, and restaurants are also clearly aimed at tourists, and their prices reflect that. When I started adding everything together, I won't lie, it was a bit of a reality check. What surprised me, though, was that the city also makes it surprisingly easy to travel well without spending a fortune. Once I looked beyond the obvious tourist spots, I realized there were plenty of ways to enjoy Hong Kong while keeping my budget under control. The public transportation system is incredibly affordable, reliable, and efficient, making it easy to explore almost every corner of the city without relying on expensive taxis. Some of the most breathtaking views, whether from waterfront promenades, hiking trails, or public lookout points, don't cost a single dollar. In many cases, the experiences that left the biggest impression on me were completely free. Food was another pleasant surprise. Instead of eating at restaurants designed for visitors, I found myself enjoying small local eateries, where the meals were not only much more affordable, but also far more memorable. Those simple places gave me a genuine taste of everyday life in Hong Kong, something no luxury restaurant could have offered. What really changed my perspective wasn't just the price of the city, it was the value you receive when you spend thoughtfully. You don't have to say yes to every expensive attraction to enjoy everything Hong Kong has to offer. If you mix a few memorable splurges with local experiences, affordable transportation, and free attractions, you'll discover that the city rewards good planning. By the end of my trip, I realized Hong Kong isn't necessarily expensive. It simply encourages you to spend wisely, and when you do, the experience is worth every cent. Shock 9. The feeling of being small but inspired. Above everything else, the biggest surprise Hong Kong gave me wasn't a place, a building, or an experience. It was a feeling. For the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely small. And I mean that in the best possible way. Standing between towering glass skyscrapers with green mountains rising quietly behind them and the lights of Victoria Harbor stretching across the water, I couldn't help but pause. In that moment, the city reminded me just how vast the world really is, and how many different ways people have learned to live, dream, and build their lives. There was something deeply humbling about that realization. Back home, it's easy to become consumed by your own routine, your own goals, and the familiar rhythm of everyday life. But traveling has a way of breaking that cycle. Hong Kong reminded me that beyond everything I know, there are countless stories unfolding every single day. Millions of people wake up, chase ambitions, overcome challenges, and create lives that are completely different from mine. Somehow, instead of making me feel insignificant, that thought made me feel inspired. The city has an energy that's difficult to describe until you've experienced it yourself. It's ambitious without losing its history, fast-paced without losing its identity, and constantly evolving while still respecting where it came from. Watching that balance made me reflect on my own journey. It encouraged me to dream a little bigger, work a little harder, and remain curious about the places and people I haven't discovered yet. Long after I left Hong Kong, that feeling stayed with me. It wasn't the skyline I remembered most or even the famous attractions. It was the perspective the city gave me. It reminded me that the world keeps moving, changing, and growing every single day, whether we're paying attention or not. In the end, that's the greatest gift travel can offer. You return home carrying more than photographs and souvenirs. You come back with a wider perspective, a renewed sense of purpose, and a quiet reminder that there is still so much of the world waiting to be explored. So, those were the moments that genuinely surprised me about Hong Kong. It wasn't just the incredible efficiency or the breathtaking skyline, it was the way the city constantly challenged my expectations. From its fast paced streets and towering buildings to its peaceful hiking trails, rich history, incredible food, and surprisingly calm atmosphere, Hong Kong showed me that a great city is about much more than what appears in postcards or social media clips. It's a place filled with contrasts where modern life and tradition, chaos and tranquility all exist side by side. If Hong Kong is on your travel list, I would absolutely recommend visiting. Just don't expect the experience to match the polished photos you've seen online. The city is more intense, more layered, and far more fascinating than any picture can capture. Give yourself time to slow down, explore beyond the famous landmarks, and let the city reveal itself naturally. That's when you'll discover what makes it truly unforgettable. Now, if you enjoyed hearing my honest thoughts and experiences, I'd really appreciate your support. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and join me on the next adventure, because there are plenty more destinations to explore, and I'd love to take you along for the journey. Now I'd love to hear from you. If you've visited Hong Kong, what surprised you the most? And if it's still on your bucket list, which part of the city are you most excited or curious to experience?